He's just a diversity admission. He won't last a week. That's what one professor whispered. Before Malik even stepped into class, Malik Carter stood at the edge of the ivy-covered mathematics building, adjusting the strap on his backpack with a mix of awe and quiet defiance. The building towered above him, ornate, intimidating, and full of minds convinced they were the best in the world. For Malik, this wasn't just another first day of class. It was a declaration of presence. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago, Malik had never set foot on a campus this elite. His high school teachers had barely believed he'd even get accepted to Hartsfield University, one of the top 5 math programs in the nation. But here he was, 18 years old, black, wearing secondhand sneakers, and holding a full academic scholarship in his pocket. Inside the lecture hall, students were already gathered, many of them children of professors, tech CEOs, or Nobel laureates. Malik took a seat in the third row, unnoticed at first. That is, until Professor Gregory Linton walked in. Linton was a legend, renowned for his brilliant theorems, brutal tests, and a reputation for having no patience for underprepared students. His cold blue eyes scanned the room and landed squarely on Malik. "You," Linton said, pointing. "New face. Name, Malik Carter," he said, straightening. "Background." Malik hesitated. "Public school. South Chicago. Honors track." A few students chuckled. One girl near the back mumbled, "This should be fun." Without warning, Professor Linton began scrawling a complex differential equation on the board, one that hadn't been introduced in any freshman curriculum. "If you're here, you should be able to solve this. Come on, show us what you've got, Carter." The room fell into a hush. Everyone expected a crash and burn moment. Malik rose slowly, walked to the board, scanned the equation, and paused. Then, with steady hands and total silence, he began working. A few gasps rippled through the class as the structure of his solution became clear. He didn't just solve it. He rewrote it using a cleaner, more elegant method, one Linton himself had published 5 years ago in an academic journal. Malik had studied his papers on weekends for fun. Linton stared at the board, lips pressed into a thin line. The girl in the back sat upright, eyes wide. A few students exchanged shocked glances. No one said a word until Malik put the marker down and quietly returned to his seat. "Interesting," Linton said, his voice unreadable. "We'll see how you handle next week." But Malik didn't need to wait. He had already made his mark, and this was just day one. After the shock of Malik's flawless solution on the first day, a strange silence followed him wherever he went. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't even curiosity. It was tension. A quiet, restrained hostility that clung to every hallway, every classroom, every glance he caught out of the corner of his eye. The next morning, Malik stepped into the student lounge where a group of students were reviewing problems from the previous night's assignment. He had finished them hours ago, but thought maybe he could contribute or even make a few acquaintances. As he approached, the group suddenly went silent. "Yo, Carter," said one student, Alex, tall with sandy blonde hair and a rugby jacket. "Why don't you go explain your fancy methods to Professor Linton instead? We do things the regular way here." Malik gave a polite smile. "Just thought I'd join the group. Help out if I could." "You already helped," said another. "You helped show us what it feels like to look stupid in class." Laughter erupted. It wasn't friendly. Malik didn't respond. He simply turned and walked away, but each step felt heavier than the last. He hadn't asked to be the center of attention. He just solved a problem the best way he knew how. In the dining hall later that afternoon, he found a quiet table in the corner and pulled out a notebook filled with scribbled equations and diagrams. Numbers were comforting. They didn't whisper. They didn't judge. They didn't laugh. He was deep into a proof on modular arithmetic when a shadow blocked his light. "Carter, right?" He looked up. It was Professor Elaine Monroe, the only woman on the math faculty and known for her blunt honesty. "Yes, ma'am," Malik answered. She glanced at his open notebook. "You working on the Hardy conjecture?" Malik nodded, trying to generalize some of the lattice applications beyond primes. "Just for fun." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's not light reading. You realize most second-year PhDs avoid it." He smiled, sheepishly. "I like puzzles." She stared at him for a moment. "Listen, you made an impression. But around here, you're not going to win fans by showing up the faculty. Keep your head down. Play the game." Malik felt his stomach tighten. "What game is that?" She sighed. Pretend like you're still learning, even when you're 10 steps ahead. With that, she walked off, leaving Malik more conflicted than before. Was he supposed to hide his brilliance just to fit in? To shrink himself so others could feel tall? That night, Malik FaceTimed his mom. "You eating enough?" she asked, peering through the tiny screen from their modest kitchen back home. "Yeah, Ma. I'm fine," Malik replied, though his voice lacked energy. "Don't lie to your mama." He sighed. "They don't like me here, Ma. Not really. I embarrassed a professor, and now the other students act like I'm radioactive." "Let me tell you something," she said, leaning closer. "They don't have to like you. They just have to learn not to ignore you. Don't let nobody dim your shine because they can't handle your light." Malik smiled, tears quietly forming. "Thanks, Ma." The next day, Professor Linton began the lecture with a subtle dig. "Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that academic humility is a virtue. Solving one problem doesn't make you a mathematician." A few students snickered. Malik didn't react. Linton continued. "Now, let's discuss the Laplace transform and applications outside linear systems. Any thoughts?" Silence. Linton let the silence sit. "Carter?" Malik cleared his throat. "Laplace transforms can be extended to stochastic processes in queuing theory, especially in modeling internet traffic flow." Even Linton looked mildly impressed, until he caught himself. "Right. Of course." Moving on. After class, a few students lingered, watching Malik from afar. He caught one of them, Julie, a student from his dorm, looking at him with an expression that was neither judgmental nor admiring, just observant. Later that week, flyers went up around campus for the university's math league tryouts. Only the top 3% of students were even eligible to audition for the competitive team. Malik hadn't considered joining. He wasn't there to compete, just to learn. But maybe it was time to stop hiding. The next morning, Malik's name appeared on the sign-up sheet, and just beneath it, scribbled in pencil, "Let's see if he's as good as he thinks." The campus buzzed with anticipation. The Hartsfield Math League tryouts weren't just a test of brilliance. They were a battlefield for reputation. Winning a spot meant instant academic validation, mentorship from tenured faculty, and even internship offers from top tech firms. For Malik Carter, signing up had been a quiet rebellion that he wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. He was proving it to himself. That he belonged. That no matter how cold the glances or cruel the whispers, his mind couldn't be silenced. On the morning of the tryouts, Malik arrived early. The exam would be 3 hours long, split into 2 parts: abstract theoretical proofs and time-sensitive problem-solving drills. No calculators, no outside materials, just a whiteboard, his marker, and whatever he carried in his head. "Looks like you're taking this seriously," said a voice behind him. Malik turned to see Julie, the observant girl from his dorm, now holding a coffee and eyeing him thoughtfully. "I don't show up to lose," Malik said with a half-smile. She nodded. "Some of the others. Let's just say not everyone plays fair." Malik's eyebrows rose. "What do you mean?" But before she could answer, Professor Linton entered the room with a clipboard and a faint sneer. "Let's begin." The first half of the exam was brutal. Malik thrived. The moment the questions hit his desk, his mind locked in like gears snapping into place. Theorems danced. Proofs formed. He finished 2 of the hardest questions 20 minutes ahead of time. But it was during the second half that things began to feel wrong. Malik reached for a fresh marker provided at his station, but as he began solving, the ink smeared unevenly. The marker wasn't working right. He tried another. Same issue. The tips were dry. All of them. He raised his hand. "Yes?" Linton called out from the front. "My markers are dried out." Linton walked over, picked one up, tested it, and frowned. They were working earlier. "Well, they aren't now," Malik replied evenly. "Do you have replacements?" Linton held his gaze for a second too long. "We'll check. For now, use this." He handed Malik one that was barely better than the rest. Malik's time was bleeding away. His writing was faint and slow. He had to press hard to make the numbers visible. Every equation took longer. Every proof felt like dragging his mind through mud. Across the room, Alex, the same student who had mocked him in the lounge, smirked and leaned back confidently, his board crisp and clear. Still, Malik refused to give in. He adjusted. He wrote smaller. He switched strategies mid-problem. Where others relied on neat visuals, he used raw deduction and mental math. By the final minute, he was still solving when the timer rang. Markers down. Linton called. Malik stepped back, forehead glistening with sweat. As students exited, Julie caught up with him. They swapped your markers. He looked at her, stunned. What? I passed this room last night after hours. I saw Alex and one of the proctors talking, laughing. They were by the supplies. Malik clenched his jaw. Why would they go that far? Julie shrugged. Because you scared them. You're not just smart, you're disruptive. You're not supposed to be here, but you are. That evening, Malik sat in the library long after dark, fuming. Not because he'd been sabotaged, but because even in a place built for brilliance, envy could still eclipse fairness. He stared down at a blank page and scrawled one sentence. They're afraid of what I represent. The next day, the results were posted. Malik had scored third overall, still enough to qualify. Barely. But in the notes, Professor Linton had written, concerns about clarity of final section. Work was incomplete or illegible in places. Malik knew what that meant. Linton was trying to plant doubt, a justification to bump him off if needed. He didn't have the highest score, but he had something more dangerous, a growing reputation. Other professors had noticed his talent. A grad student had even emailed him for help with a thesis problem, and now an unexpected email landed in his inbox. Subject: Research Lab Invitation. Professor Monroe Malik, I've reviewed your work from the exam. Impressive adjustments under pressure. I'd like to invite you to my research group. There's space for someone with your kind of mind. Let me know. Malik read it twice, then slowly smiled. If they couldn't beat him fairly, they'd try to break him quietly. But he had no intention of being broken. He clicked reply. The first meeting of Professor Monroe's research group was held in a small seminar room on the third floor of the mathematics building. It was a stark contrast from the lecture halls Malik was used to. No rows of seats, no podium, no pretentious atmosphere. Just a round table, a whiteboard, and half a dozen sharp minds. When Malik entered, the chatter died down. Professor Monroe looked up from her notes and smiled. Everyone, this is Malik Carter. He'll be joining us this semester. One student, a lanky guy with thick glasses named Ethan, nodded stiffly. The others offered a mix of polite welcomes and indifferent stares. It was clear he'd have to earn his place here too. They began by reviewing a current problem the group was tackling, a numerical instability issue in machine learning models caused by chaotic distributions in data clusters. The math was dense, multivariable, and steeped in statistics. Malik watched quietly as the others debated approaches. Most suggestions were safe, modifications to existing solutions, tweaks to tried-and-true formulas. Then Monroe turned to Malik. What do you think? He hesitated only a moment. I think everyone's solving the wrong problem. All eyes turned to him. What do you mean? Ethan asked, almost defensively. You're trying to smooth the instability post hoc, after the data's misbehaved. But what if we predicted where it would misbehave before it happened? Kind of like a weather model, forecasting chaos based on boundary patterns. There was a pause. Then Monroe's lips curved slightly. Show us. Malik stood, grabbed a marker, and walked to the whiteboard. Within minutes, he laid out a simplified predictive model using concepts from topological data analysis and vector field mapping. The room fell silent as the logic came together like gears in a perfect machine. When he finished, Ethan leaned forward, grudgingly impressed. That might actually work. Professor Monroe nodded. Start running simulations. Carter, I want to write up on this by Friday. As the group packed up, Monroe stopped Malik at the door. You have a mind for abstraction. Rare. Don't let this place box you in. Thanks, Professor, he said. She leaned in. Also, don't be surprised if Linton finds a way to push back. He's old school. Doesn't take kindly to being upstaged. Malik nodded. He was already familiar with that dance. But something had shifted. The stairs in the hallway weren't just cold anymore. They were cautious. Curious. Some students even nodded as he passed. He wasn't invisible. He was a name people whispered now. 2 weeks later, the dean's office posted the official math league team list. Malik Carter, starter. Alex's name was not on it. That afternoon, as Malik crossed campus, he found a handwritten note stuffed in his locker. Stay in your place, Carter. You're not welcome here. He stared at the words, not with fear, but with resolve. That evening, at the group meeting, he presented his revised model. The group had run initial simulations, and Malik's forecast had improved accuracy rates by 36%. The faculty sponsors were stunned. One of them, Dr. Yamada from Computational Systems, approached him after. Ever thought about publishing? Publishing? Malik blinked. Your method? It's novel. We could co-author. Malik stood still for a moment, absorbing it. He'd been mocked, sabotaged, threatened. Now he was being asked to co-author. That night, he opened a new notebook, flipped to the first page, and wrote, "They tried to silence me. Now they quote me." 3 months after joining Professor Monroe's team, Malik Carter found himself walking through the marble halls of the National Collegiate Mathematics Conference in Boston. He'd been selected, not just to attend, but to present his model on predictive chaos in data systems. Now co-authored and officially submitted for peer-reviewed, he was the youngest presenter in the room. The only black undergraduate on the speaker roster. His palms were sweaty, but his eyes were steadied as he waited outside the auditorium. Voices echoed from inside. He recognized one immediately, Professor Gregory Linton. "We must not lower academic rigor for the sake of inclusion," Linton declared on stage during a panel. "Admitting students who aren't prepared does more harm than good. Not everyone can be a mathematician." The audience clapped, albeit politely. Malik's jaw clenched. Professor Monroe leaned in from beside him. "He's baiting you. Stay focused." "I am," Malik replied. "But I won't pretend I didn't hear it." 10 minutes later, Malik stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright. The audience, hundreds of academics, researchers, and students, sat in patient expectation. He adjusted the mic, took a breath. "My name is Malik Carter," he began. "I'm a freshman at Hartsfield University, and I'm here to show you how chaos can be predicted." A few chuckles, smirks. No one expected much, but within minutes, the tone shifted. Malik's voice was clear, his logic crisp. Slide by slide, he walked them through the mathematical framework, the simulations, the anomaly predictions, and most importantly, the real-world application in cybersecurity and AI optimization. People began leaning forward, pens scratched paper. Linton, seated in the front row, watched without blinking. When Malik presented the slide showing a 36% increase in model accuracy using his approach, there was an audible gasp. And then, the unexpected happened. A professor from Stanford stood up. "Did you just say you achieved 36% on a chaotic cluster?" "Yes, sir," Malik replied. "Can you walk me through the derivation again?" Malik didn't hesitate. He returned to the whiteboard and explained, fluid and unshaken. By the time he finished, the Stanford professor nodded and sat down. At the end of the presentation, the room erupted in applause. Not polite, not forced, genuine. Afterward, a crowd gathered around him. Some asked technical questions. Others just wanted to shake his hand. Then came Linton. He approached slowly, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. "You handled yourself well," he said flatly. "Thank you," Malik replied. "You've made quite the impression. Just remember, one paper doesn't make you a prodigy." Malik met his eyes. "And one grudge doesn't make you right." Linton blinked, then walked away. Behind him, Professor Monroe smiled with pride. The following morning, the conference published a list of talks ranked by audience ratings. Malik Carter, highest-rated talk of the conference. Back at Hartsfield, everything changed. Students who once whispered behind his back now came asking for help. Faculty stopped him in the halls. The dean invited him to lunch. Internship offers came in from Google, DeepMind, even the NSA. He'd gone from outcast to icon. But Malik stayed grounded. He kept attending Monroe's sessions. He still called his mom every Sunday. And in his dorm, he pinned a photo of his old high school next to the conference certificate, a reminder of where he came from and how far he intended to go. The days after the conference were a blur. Malik was flooded with interview requests from tech blogs, emails from recruiters, and invites to elite summer programs. But through it all, he kept his rhythm. Wake early, review new theories, attend Monroe's sessions, and call his mother every Sunday. One Tuesday morning, Professor Monroe called a private meeting. "Come by my office," she said in a short email. "There's something I want to share. Confidential." Malik arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. Her office was cluttered with papers, chalkboards covered in equations, and a framed picture of a younger Monroe shaking hands with a Nobel laureate. She gestured for him to sit. "What's going on?" Malik asked. Monroe sat down slowly. "You've made waves, Malik. I knew you would. But now that you've crossed that threshold, there's something I think you need to know. She opened a drawer and pulled out a worn manila folder. My first year teaching here, she began. I had a student named Evelyn James. A black woman. Quiet. Brilliant. But this department never gave her a chance. Malik leaned forward. She published a groundbreaking paper, more innovative than half the faculty here. But it was dismissed. Linton was on the review board, called it incomplete and ambitious beyond merit. What happened to her? Malik asked. Monroe looked out the window. She left academia. Took a job teaching high school in Baltimore. But that paper? It's now the basis of 3 separate doctoral theses. She never got credit. Malik felt heat rise in his chest. Why are you telling me this? Because I see the same thing happening again, Monroe said. You're being celebrated now, but the system hasn't changed. They'll let you shine, but only as long as they control where that light lands. She slid the folder toward him. Inside were scanned documents. Evelyn's original paper, internal memos, and most shocking of all, an email from Linton to the faculty committee urging them to block Evelyn's thesis from passing. He's done this before, Monroe said. And he'll try again. With you. Malik sat in silence, the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. Then he spoke. I want to find her. Evelyn. Monroe nodded. I thought you might. Later that week, Malik skipped the Friday math circle and took a train to Baltimore. He found Evelyn James through an alumni directory, now teaching calculus at a public magnet school. She greeted him in her classroom, surrounded by posters of fractals, black scientists, and handwritten equations from students. I heard about you, she said with a smile. Malik Carter, right? He nodded. I read your paper. It changed how I think about math. About patterns. Evelyn chuckled. It nearly changed mine too. Almost made me give up. He handed her a printout of one of the doctoral dissertations that had built upon her work. You didn't fail? Malik said. They did. Her eyes shimmered, but she held steady. Why are you really here, Malik? To learn. From you. From what they tried to bury. She invited him to stay the day, sat in on her class, watched her students hang on to every word. It wasn't a lecture hall or a research lab, but it was genius, alive and unfiltered. Before he left, Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't fight to fit in. Build something they can't tear down. When Malik returned to campus, he walked straight to Monroe's office and dropped a stack of papers on her desk. I want to publish a follow-up, he said. Co-authored, with Evelyn James. Monroe blinked, then grinned. Now you're thinking legacy. They worked in secret for weeks, refining the math, updating the proofs, preparing it for submission under both names. And this time, Malik insisted it go to an external journal outside the university's politics. The day the paper was accepted, Malik posted a single tweet. They buried her brilliance. We just dug it back up. It went viral. Evelyn was flooded with interview requests of her own. The math community, embarrassed and fascinated, began re-examining her contributions. Students quoted her. Professors emailed apologies. Linton? He said nothing, but he didn't have to. His silence was louder than any defense. It was a rainy Wednesday when Hartsfield University held its annual Future of Mathematics Symposium, an event where only the most influential faculty and a few selected students were invited to speak. Malik Carter, now in his second semester, was not only speaking. He was closing the event. The auditorium was packed, not just with students and professors from Hartsfield, but with visitors from other top institutions who had read the now widely circulated paper co-authored by Malik and Evelyn James. The title of Malik's talk? Reclaiming Space, Innovation Beyond Gatekeeping. As he stepped onto the stage, thunder rolled faintly outside. Malik wore a charcoal suit and a quiet confidence that filled the room before he said a word. When I arrived here, he began, I believed that brilliance would speak for itself. That equations, like truth, were neutral. But I've learned something since then. Brilliance must be defended, not against ignorance, but against arrogance. The room went quiet. Some of you, he continued, believed I didn't belong here. Some said it outright. Others just made sure I felt it. He paused, scanning the crowd. Linton sat in the second row, his face unreadable. Monroe beside him, arms crossed, proud. But here's the truth. No institution, no title, no gate can contain genius. Not Evelyn James's. Not mine. Not anyone's. He turned and pointed to the projection screen behind him. Images of black mathematicians throughout history, including Evelyn's name and photo. Every time you exclude one of us, you subtract from the future. The crowd erupted into applause, some standing, others stunned. Later that afternoon, Malik stood on the campus green, umbrella in hand, talking with a group of students who had skipped their lunch just to meet him. "We're starting a student research journal," said a freshman girl. "Peer-reviewed, student-led. We want to feature voices like Evelyn's. Like yours." Malik smiled. "Good. Make noise." Just then, Julie appeared with a laptop. "You need to see this." It was an open letter, circulating on social media, signed by hundreds of students and alumni, demanding an apology and formal recognition for Evelyn James from the university. Monroe forwarded another message to his inbox minutes later. The Board of Academic Ethics had opened a case review into Linton's past tenure decisions. It was only a beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. Malik sat under a tree, rain lightly pattering on the leaves, and opened a fresh page in his notebook that he wrote. "They tried to humiliate me with silence. I answered with signal. They questioned my place. I built a platform." And then he scribbled the title for his next research topic, Mathematics as Resistance, Redefining Intellectual Power. That weekend, Evelyn James returned to Hartsfield for the first time in 20 years. She and Malik stood in front of a packed auditorium as Monroe introduced them both. She said only one thing before yielding the stage. "There's a new equation for change, and it starts with them."